Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Welcome to Target Market Insights. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Now, if you're enjoying the podcast, I need you to do me a favor and leave us a 5-star rating and review. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, today we're going to be talking to Matt Aitchison. Matt is a multi-7-figure real estate investor, business coach, speaker, and philanthropist. He is the founder and CEO of The Rich Life, a personal development and accountability-based e-learning company that helps high achievers create more wealth, freedom, and fulfillment in their life and business through real estate investing. Let's welcome to the show, Matt Aitchison.
What's up?
Matt, good to have you on. I know you go by Matty A as well. Which one do you prefer for our conversation today?
Well, you know, whether it's Matt, Matty, Mateo, Matty A, man, whatever you're feeling, bro, I answer to them all.
All right, man. All right. We'll stick with Matt, and I might throw in a couple Matties as well.
There you go.
Matt, we kind of went through some of the things you're working on right now, some of the successes, but I want to talk a little bit more about kind of how you got there. Why don't you start by just taking 30 seconds or a minute and talking about who you are and kind of how you got to where you're at today?
Yeah. So I, started out, I guess, with a little bit of a turbulent beginning. Everybody's got, I think their own hardships and challenges that they work through. Really, the two defining ones for me were when my stepmother passed, who was really a mother figure for me until, from 3 to 17. She got diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. And that was on a Saturday, and she passed away that following Wednesday. And so I basically just watched somebody who, in my eyes, was doing everything right, and right in quotations based on what society says, right? Eat healthy and clean, physical exercise, do right by people, working in the community. She just was kind of that full package, came from a faith-based background, and she got dealt a pretty shitty deck of cards. And that was when I really started to question everything. I was 17 years old and kind of started rebelling and got I think wrapped up in drugs and alcohol and hanging out with people that maybe weren't necessarily aligned with the goals and the future and the vision that I had for myself. And that ended up leading me to getting expelled my first week of my senior year in high school. And that was really some true hardship that it was either you're going to do something about it and it's going to show you what you're made of, or you're going to play the victim card. And so I ended up kind of getting myself out of that situation and having to do a bunch of stuff to even be able to graduate from high school. And I ended up going to college. And the first month into college, who would have thought, lightning strikes twice, drugs, alcohol. I got arrested for a physical altercation that was, induced obviously because of some of those things. And I remember this was really the moment, crystal clear, that changed my whole life, where I came out of my blackout and I looked to my left, and there's this big, probably like 6'6", 6'7" biker dude in leathers, handlebar mustache, tattoos everywhere. I looked to my right, and there's a Hispanic gang member with tattoos all over his face. And for me, that was my, what I call the oh shit moment of back was against the wall. And I realized very quickly that all of the talking that I'd done in my own head and to other people, the audio of I'm going to achieve this and I'm going to, be successful and be a millionaire, was not aligned with my video and the actions that I was taking in my life that led me to that physical moment of new environment, new tribe and community. And if I didn't do something about that, this was going to be my life for many years moving forward. And I just remember praying to God going, if you give me a second chance, because really it was my second chance, I'm not going to waste it. And that's what led me on the path that I've been on for the last, 10, 11 years. I ended up graduating from UC Santa Barbara and was working full time. And I ended up, when I got out of jail, interviewing at like 20 different places. One place took me, and it was as a cold caller. And that was my first introduction to kind of small business entrepreneurship. And I went from being a cold caller, working my way up to being kind of the right-hand guy for this guy over 3 years of finishing out my college career, I guess you could say. And he wanted me to take over his business. And I had seen kind of the sexiness of, I'd seen the challenges of entrepreneurship, but I'd also seen some of the sexiness of entrepreneurship as well, and say, you know what? I don't want to be in a job. I moved back home and I started interviewing at different places and kind of exploring entrepreneurship. And I was interviewing for like $30,000, $40,000 a year jobs. And I came across Craigslist ad for be a mentor for a real estate investor. And I was thinking I was going to make millions of dollars. Long story short, I ended up working for this guy for about 10 months for free, but he was flipping houses like crazy back in 2010. And this is when you could kind of sneeze and come across an amazing deal that made you $30,000 to $50,000 a pop. And he was just sitting back, chilling, vacationing all the time. I was running all the projects. I was sourcing all the deals. I was selling all the deals. And I realized very quickly that this could be a path to building wealth and really realigning with the goals and the dreams that I'd had for myself of being successful. And I started building a real estate team. We became, top 1,000 real estate teams in the country, ranked by Wall Street Journal. Started flipping a bunch of houses. So I flipped a couple hundred houses over the last, 7, 8 years. Partnered in a construction company, started building ancillary businesses around kind of my tree trunk of real estate and things that branched off on that based on the business that I was doing. Figured I might as well start capturing some of the additional income that I was servicing out to other vendors. And fell into kind of education and mentorship. And now really where a lot of my time is spent is in that area of education and mentorship for people that want to unlock at least a path to financial freedom, right? And knowing what that path and those stepping stones look like and to eventually achieving it. And also really getting more into development and commercial properties and some of the things that I've been working on with a hotel that I purchased up here in Lake Tahoe, commercial strip centers and some of my area, my neck of the woods in Sacramento, working on some vineyard development out here in Napa Valley. So a lot of different things kind of going on there, but that's there's a lot of failing forward and a lot of failing moments, obviously from where I started to where I'm at today, which I'm sure we'll dig into.
Yeah, I mean, what an incredible story. I mean, you start with kind of that first, rough patch, after your stepmother passed away. And, really you're at a moment where you're trying to discover not just yourself, but really the world, right? I mean, trying to figure out, well, why would this happen for someone who was doing everything that we're supposed to do? And that obviously triggered you down kind of a different path than you were expecting. And, being able to overcome that, going to college, having to overcome a similar situation where you're pulling yourself out of that and then starting to find that right path. I mean, you talked about working at that call center for the 3+ years while you were in college and kind of rising up the ranks there. I mean, that kind of indicates to me that there's a work ethic and some sort of a drive that you have, along with working for that real estate quote unquote mentor for 10 months unpaid, where you were really running the business. Where do you think that drive came from and how did you kind of tap into that at that age?
Well, I really came from sports. I was in sports my whole life and I was never the fastest. I was never the smartest, the strongest, the most agile. But I remember one thing that my dad told me was you don't need to be any of those things. You just need to outwork the next person. And that was a very simple answer for me was I've got grit. I've got resilience. I've been through some stuff. I know that if I can put out maximum output and effort every single day, I can live with where the chips may fall. And for me, I've always believed that the universe responds to the man or to the woman who refuses to be denied. And I just refuse to be denied. Again, I'm kind of like a blunt object. I'm not always the most agile, the smartest. I'm not always the quickest to do the things that maybe need to be done, but I just do them. And they're not always right, but I just refuse to be denied. And I am aware enough along the way of taking those actions to check in and go, what worked? Oh, let's double down on that. What didn't work? Let's course correct on that, or let's scrap that, right? Or let's try something different there. And I also accepted the big thing for me was when I was kind of coming out of my turbulent time, I realized that I needed to, change my environment. I needed to change my habits, my mindset, who I was spending my time with in my social circle. And I just accepted the fact that one of my early mentors, that guy, Bill, who was the business owner of that little firm that I was working for, he said, your current or your past mess doesn't disqualify you from being successful in life. If you're willing to turn the page, you can start writing a new chapter. And a lot of people, I think we hold on to a lot of the past. We stare in the rearview mirror too long, and then we lose sight of what's in front of us. And so I kind of have learned as an entrepreneur, which I think a lot of people who are successful develop this, as well as the people who are unsuccessful struggle with this, is just having a short-term memory. Whether it's a success or whether it's a failure, I'm constantly moving as quickly as I can to get to the next level and learning opportunity and lesson. And so that is really what led me into the path and the journey that I've been on of, one, trying to identify where my skills and my strengths lie. Two, being crystal clear in what my vision is, what my North Star is. So that way, based on the decisions that I'm making on a daily, a weekly, a monthly, and annual basis, and the goals that I'm setting, they are in alignment with that. And I can align my skill set with what's going to get me there and help me achieve those things. And those were some of the, characteristics that I think have served me along my entrepreneurial journey in just knocking down hurdles and, hitting those when you face those hardships, and you get through them. It's kind of like baptism by fire. It's really scary walking through the fire, but once you get through it, and you look back, you go, okay, I'm still whole. Okay. My heart's still beating. My wife still loves me. My kids still think I'm awesome. All of those fears that we have as individuals, unless you're staring down the gun of a barrel of a gun, you're going to find a way to get through those things. And so a lot of the fears that I had early on, and a lot of the challenges that I had early on, turned into confidence. And there's momentum that gets built behind that. And after a while, doesn't mean I don't fail, which I do every single day. Doesn't mean I don't have all the self-doubts and challenges that a lot of people do as well. I just have changed the psychology of how I engage in those moments.
No, I love it, Matt. I love what you talked about. There's a quote you said you mentioned Bob, and he talked about your present situation, your current mess, your past mess. It doesn't stop you from writing the next chapter if you're willing to turn the page. And I think that is a great quote and a great approach to whatever your situation is currently. If you're willing to turn the page, if you're willing to start a new chapter, you can write a new beginning and kind of write what's happening. And I think that's the mindset that's necessary to make that transition. So you have this platform, the Rich Life platform. You've talked about kind of how you've been able to make money flipping houses and building these ancillary businesses. But really this Rich Life platform goes beyond just the money piece. I do want to talk about the money piece, but I want to talk about holistically the Rich Life platform. Why did you launch this platform and what exactly is it about?
Well, I had started generating a decent amount of wealth and income in my early 20s, and which is really when I was coming out of college, all I thought was important, right? Money and the sexiness of the lifestyle and the travel and all those kind of things. And when I became a millionaire and then I, started climbing from there, I realized, okay, well, doesn't really make me any better of a human being. Money just makes you more of who you already are. So it just gave me more opportunity to express who I was, and to have opportunities to make an impact on other people. But I realized that there were a lot of things that I had sacrificed in the process of trying to achieve the income and the money and the wealth that I wanted to achieve. And that was really, there is no finish line on that. And so for me, I was bankrupt in my relationships. I was bankrupt in how I was taking care of my health. I was bankrupt in not giving back to people. It was a very selfish time in my life where I was just trying to serve my own selfish needs. And I remember being around, I went to a mastermind, and you had to be a millionaire to be in the mastermind group. And there was about 15 guys in this group. And One of them there was really two different types of guys in this group. One was financially killer, well off, very abundant, but they were bankrupt in all those other areas. Their wives didn't like them. They were estranged from their kids. They were overweight and unhealthy. They thought their money defined who they were, and it was their identity. And then there was another group of men, which I call the whole life millionaire, which is somebody who lives like a millionaire in all of the pillars of their life. And I went, man, that was a big eye-opening thing for me. And this conversation and topic, I think, has become more enhanced and more spotlight put on it. But at that time, 8 years ago, I hadn't heard of it. And I felt like I was a pretty affluent individual who was in some good relationships and circles and conversations at that time. And that was like mind blowing to me. And I said, man, how many people don't have access to these kind of conversations or the resources or the tools or the frameworks that give them the ability to go out and build their own rich and fulfilling life, not just rich with the income and the investments and the wealth that they generate, but rich relationships, rich in their community, rich in the contribution that they give back, rich in their health, mentally, physically, spiritually. And so that's kind of where I created my own rich definition, and knowing that everybody has a different definition of rich, first and foremost. But it was the journey that led me on seeking what that definition was that allowed me to start unlocking it. And so I think that was a lot of, for a lot of people, they don't even give themselves an opportunity to not only one, get clarity in what it is, but two, then what vehicle or path is going to help them unlock that. And so that's why I started interviewing a lot of what I call the whole life millionaires on my show, the Millionaire Mindcast. And then where we launched the Rich Life, which we got the Rich Life Planner, which is really a habit tracker, an organizer. And it kind of encompasses everything in that rich brand. And now we have our community and masterminds and events and things like that that allow us to get together. But really, it was just to have access to people that I could learn and grow from selfishly. But at the same time, when I started seeing how it was impacting so many people from all around the globe, because now we're in the top 25 entrepreneur podcasts on iTunes, it was something that became so much more fulfilling, hearing how it was making a difference in other people's lives and how they were able to seek and define and unlock certain areas of their life that they knew they wanted, right? Because when I always ask people like, hey, what are your goals next year? That I want to make more money or I want to travel more. But when it came down to like that microscopic clarity of, no, what do you want, right? Whether that's how much money, how much time do you want to be traveling, to where, with who, what kind of experiences do you want to be creating? What do you want your paths, right? Asking all of those questions, a lot of people just, I don't know. Right. And so it was really to start asking people the right questions, being that I believe the questions we ask ourselves and others based on the feedback we receive from those questions shape the life and the world and the lens that we see and engage our physical reality in. Right. So it was really just trying to create more opportunity for people to have those conversations, build those relationships with themselves and with others to then go out and create it.
No, I love it. And Matt, as I'm listening, there's probably two types of people listening right now, right? Or three, I should say. There's the person who is where you're at that has achieved the rich life holistically, and they're thriving and doing well in all those facets of their life. There is the person who has achieved the rich life financially, who has the money, but maybe is still empty in some of those other areas and some of those other aspects. And then there's the person who's still looking to achieve the rich life financially and the other aspects that we're talking about. What are some of the pushbacks you see, some of the challenges that you face whenever you're talking to people about what it actually takes to create and sustain a rich life?
Well, number one is people say they're too busy, right? And being busy is a choice. A lot of people mistake movement for achievement. If you can get very intentional about creating and carving out spaces, whether that's your morning routine, whether that's what appointments you do and don't take, whether that's how much time you spend with your health or your family, like I live and die by my calendar, and all my employees know that, right? And it's one of those things where if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. So I created my calendar to match the activities and the relationships and the opportunities that I believe are going to unlock those not only outcomes physically, but also internally and spiritually. So that's one thing. Another thing that I hear a lot of pushback on, and that I believe is the biggest expense in people's business and their life, is their ego. And so instead of saying why you can't have these things, or why that's not possible, or why you can't do these things, asking the question, well, how could it become possible? What could that look like? And it's just reframing, again, going back to asking powerful questions, that our brain is freaking smart. I mean, we use a very tiny fraction of that computing power on a daily basis, let alone in our entire lifetime. So if we can give our brain, the smartest computer on the planet, work to go out and find answers to, it will, if you're asking the right questions and if you're seeking the right knowledge. And so for me, I see a lot of people who are focused on the limitations instead of the opportunities, and knowing that first and foremost, it looks different for everybody. Work-life balance for you might be completely different than work-life balance for me, and that's okay, right? So it's kind of taking all of the data that we have and compiling it in a way that you put it through a filter and you say, based on my vision, my North Star, the rich life that I want to create, what now do I need to apply to my own journey and utilize that as stepping stones to unlocking new ahas, realizations, opportunities, relationships. And when I started seeking answers to a lot of those questions, doors and things started to open up into my world that never would have been there if I wasn't asking those right questions.
Asking the right questions is so critical. I mean, you said, how can I do this? Or how do we make this happen? And I think that perspective is so critical. You talked a little bit about limitations versus opportunities. Can you just expand on that belief and kind of that viewpoint? Because to your point, the thing that most people are going to say is, hey, I'm just too busy, right? How can I do this? I don't have the time. I'm busy. I've got a day job. I've got the kids. I've got all of these different things that are going on. I'm just too busy. Talk about limitations versus opportunities and how people can actually start to systematically unprogram or reprogram their actions and their thinking to start making time for the right things.
Well, one of my favorite acronyms is POINTFAR, PTFAR. And essentially, if you want to undo bad programming and build new programming, this is how you do it from a subconscious to a conscious level. And if you think about all of the experiences, what your mommy and your daddy told you when you were a kid, to teachers, to all the things that you've learned throughout life, through society, through culture, through media, whatever it may be, you have subconscious programming, which is kind of your filing cabinet for life. And based on certain things happening in your world, you're going to have something in your subconscious filing cabinet come up to your conscious brain, and then you're going to play it out in your physical world, which will get you certain outcomes, which will reaffirm programming. So PTFAR, it's programming. Your subconscious, right, leads to your thoughts, your conscious, and based on how you think, it will get you to feel a specific way. And based on how you feel after thinking those things, you're going to take a specific action. Based on that action, you're then going to create a physical result in your world. And based on whatever that result is, good, bad, and different, it's going to reaffirm some type of programming in your brain. So if you are telling yourself all the time that you're too busy to do things, then that is going to be the barometer and the thermometer that controls the temperature of your life. Now, if you want to find ways to change that, you just need to identify what those limiting thoughts are, isolate them, and go in and reset how you think and feel and what actions you take, which should in turn get you differing results over time, which is going to start to reaffirm and rewire the subconscious mind. And so I think a lot of people need to just stop and pause and give themselves an opportunity to think about all of the things that they believe are limitations in their life, and then to start thinking about all of the opportunities or the things that could be done differently that when they try those things and they document those things, because I really believe a lot of individuals in life are just struggling with awareness. They move from moment to moment, day to day, week to week, year to year. They look back, they take a quick inventory of, did I have a good year, a good quarter, a bad quarter? But that awareness on a daily basis, which is why I love the Rich Life Planner, is because when I'm checking in on my habits every day, when I'm checking in on my routine, when I'm doing my evening activities and planning for the next day, I'm giving myself as much of an opportunity as I possibly can to be as aware as I can, right? Because that doesn't mean I'm being great every single day. I still struggle with all the same shit everybody else does, but it gives me the ability to catch myself when I'm out of alignment with what I believe is the highest and best version of myself showing up in those moments, which gives me the best chance to create the physical world that I want for myself and the people that I'm involved with and the communities that I'm connected to. And at the same time, it gives me the awareness to obviously course correct and to make changes and to optimize things and to 2.0 things. And so I think a lot of people, they just lack the awareness in their life, and we become walking zombies, right? Plugging in and plugging out, and life is what it is. And, you know, all those kind of cliched statements where my life, I'm 100% in control of my life. So taking extreme ownership for everything that's going on in your life right now. If there's good shit going on in your life, that's because of you. If there's bad shit going on in your life, it's because of you. Well, no, it's not. It's because of you. And the second you take extreme ownership of your life is when everything changes. And when you build in little triggers or little cadences or little frameworks that allow you to at least keep your awareness up, which is why I love that tool. It at least allows us to be with both hands on the steering wheel, knowing that, hey, we're probably going to take detours. We might swerve into one lane or into the other lane. But at the end of the day, if I know what my destination is, if I know what my North Star is, and that could change and it will change over time, but awareness will allow you to keep revising that and enhancing that and growing that. That at least gives us the opportunity as individuals to be in the driver's seat with the most intentional version of ourselves. It's not always the best version of ourselves, but the most intentional version of ourselves, which then gives us the opportunity to show up in the ways that we want to show up and continue to get the results that we want to get.
Yeah, you talked about extreme ownership, and I love that notion and that concept where you just take accountability for any and everything that happens. Certainly there are things that we can't control, but we can always control what we can control. And that's really the thinking, is figure out what you can control and control it, and not walk through life like a zombie. You also mentioned about that intentionality, which I think is absolutely key. For us, we can absolutely take a look and see the days where we perform the best. Those are the days where we journal and we write down our plans for the next day. We review those plans at the end of the day, but we walk into the day with a game plan. We know what a successful day looks like. We know what we need to achieve for the day. And the days where we maybe are less efficient and less productive are the days where we just kind of woke up and we did whatever, and we kind of let the day dictate what was important to us, right? Where, you had a meeting, so you went to the meeting and you did the calls that people called you, but you didn't necessarily have a game plan going into it. So you were more reactive to the things that happened as opposed to being proactive with what you wanted to happen. So let's talk about that planner a little bit. We got the Rich Life Planner 2020 version, which, I think planning and journaling is something we've heard people talk a lot about. I know some folks still struggle with journaling. I actually am still finding different techniques that work for me, but I've tried journaling a lot of different ways. Yeah, I've struggled. Tony Robbins has an approach that I like, and Tim Ferriss has an approach that I like as well, because I struggled with what to write.
That's my big challenge.
Yeah, I would wake up and I would stare at, a blank piece of paper, and I wasn't sure if it was like a diary, if I was supposed to just write out like what I felt and my emotions, or if it was supposed to be just purely business related and, hey, here's what I'm hoping to get accomplished today, or hey, I need to meet with X amount of investors, or whatever the thing was, right? So I kind of struggled with that. Talk to me about kind of the planner that you've created and how it helps people really approach the day-to-day aspects to drive success in that intentional outcome that we talked about.
Well, before I do that, I want to touch on that as well, because that was something I struggled with as well. I would say of my morning routine, journaling is probably the weakest point for me. And one thing that has helped me a lot is in the inside cover of my journal, I have 15 questions in there. And those 15 questions, if I don't know what I want to write for that day, and I always meditate first and journal right after, kind of feeling clarity of thought in a light, in a light mood, and it gives me the ability to, map out and journal out whatever it is. Here's the thing. I think a lot of people go, how am I supposed to journal? Journal however you want to journal. Like there is no, like, this is the way you do it. And so some days my journaling will be bullet points of little things. Some days it'll be a 5-page, recap of what I enjoyed about the previous day. But asking those questions, going back to questions for me, those 15 questions, what does God want me to learn right now? Or, what is giving me anxiety right now? What am I extremely happy or grateful for right now? And just having a bunch of questions that if I'm not feeling that creative juice that's flowing that morning, cool. Go back to your consistent, line of questioning, and your brain will go to work to answer some of those questions. So that's something that we don't have the journaling piece in the planner. It's more of an organizer. It's more of a habit tracker. It does have gratitude. It does allow you to map out kind of your top 5 things of the day. And that was really one of the things that, going back to that clarity piece, is we live in a world full of distraction. We live in a world full of distraction with a million things coming at you all the time, which really keeps you on your heels unless you are, like you said, John, being very proactive in how you attack your day. And when I'm very clear with what I need to get done, so really my favorite piece of the planner is the weekly agenda, because we map out your annual goals in the beginning, and then based on your annual goals, we break down what do you need to be doing on a quarterly basis that if and when done, each quarter is a stepping stone to those annual goals getting completed. But to even break it down even further, it's what has to happen this month. And then based on what has to happen this month, you can then set your top weekly goals in the weekly agenda, and then your top 5 goals of the day. Hey, what do I need to do today that's going to help me knock down that weekly goal, which obviously in turn is going to knock down the other dominoes over time. And so being clear in just those 5 things. If I said, hey, you can't do anything else but 5 things today, narrowing down what are those top 5 things helps me at least be very clear in what my schedule needs to look like and to be aligned with in order for those things to happen. Because if I get those 5 things done, I feel great. I feel like I had a productive day. And then, of course, we have the habit tracker built into there, which my morning routine and my evening routine. So a lot of people just have a morning routine. I also have an evening routine. And I can tell you this much as I love my morning routine, when I miss my evening routine, my next day is off. I just feel like I'm not clear. I'm not hitting the ground running. I don't know in my own mind exactly what I should be doing that day. And then all of a sudden, look back at 5 p.m. and I'm like, shit, what did I get done today? I did a lot of stuff, but what did I really get done today? And did I really move the needle forward? So it's just simple little frameworks and tools that allow you to stay organized, right? Have the habit tracker, because I know that as I've massaged my habits over the years, I have found what my best morning routine is, and I found what my best evening routine is. And that also has changed based on the chapter or the season I'm at in my life. So being able to be intentional about how those routines get Matt to show up as the best or the most optimized version of himself throughout the day, which then in turn gets the physical results that I want, which then in turn obviously helps me hit goals and milestones. But it's a very simple tool. It's, good organizer. And then of course, finishing it off with some daily gratitude. And those are things that, again, I just want to give myself the best chance to say, when I look back, when all is said and done, that I lived an intentional and aware life, not going, man, I wish I would have played full out, when I was doing this, or I wish I would have been a little bit more present with my kids, or I wish I would have been more intentional with my wife, or it's not going to be hey, I wish I got more done in business, personally for me. And so this tool helps me be a better husband, be a better father, be a better employer, be more connected to the charities and causes that I'm passionate about, just be more intentional with how I'm living my life on a daily basis. And that's really all I can ask for myself. And I can live with where the chips fall in between the lines.
Matt, great tips there. And I think journaling is something that, again, I've heard people talk about for years, and we've started to be more intentional on our journaling and how we track the day-to-day. That tracker looks like a great tool for someone who wants to acquire that. What's the best way for them to order the Rich Life Planner?
Yeah, they can head over to therichlifestore.com. So it's just www.therichlifestore.com. And we have a couple different sizes, a couple different soft cover, hard cover. So depending on, what your fancy is, we got you locked in. But really the cool piece of this too, is it comes with a video course on how to set goals, how to use the planner, how to, create your board of directors, how to get your rich life vision crystal clear, and the questionnaire that helps you answer a lot of those questions, which ties into a lot of the planner. And the second piece is you're connected to more people that are intentionally building and leveraging, tools in their life to get the results that they hope to get in their life, and to have that community of people to have as a sounding board, to have as cheerleaders, to help you work through challenges and things like that. I think that's more what I'm more proud of than the product itself. It's a planner. It's a physical tool. Yes, it's great. I love it. I could sit here and talk till I'm blue in the face about why I think people need it. But at the end of the day, it is just a tiny tool that gives people the ability to connect with other like-minded people, which I think is that, that currency that a lot of people don't put enough weight on, is the relationships that come by being surrounded by people you love doing life with, and that force you and inspire you to level up and become a better version of yourself.
Matt, I want to rewind just a little bit. We've talked a lot about kind of the mindset that it takes and being intentional with our time. I want to go back because a couple things that jump out to me is you talked about, I believe his name was Bob, but the guy who owned the small business, and you talked about the real estate entrepreneur that you kind of mentored underneath for 10 months before really building out your own company, growing that, and, now having, a high 7-figure business that you operate and run. One of the things that jumps out though is that those individuals were able to build teams and systems that allowed them to scale and, quite frankly, delegate a lot of the actions in the business to go out and do the things that they love. You talked about now that you're more so focused on the education aspect and teaching other people and really starting to connect with people from that mindset. Can you talk about how you've been able to delegate, especially starting out, for that person who does feel that they're very busy and that's kind of how they're programmed today, and they're thinking about, how can I be less busy? How can I get some of this off of my plate? Can you give some tips on delegating, at least starting out, to continue to grow and build while you take some of that work off of your plate?
Yeah, well, the best hire I ever made was my first hire, which is really a personal assistant. And I really went through a simple exercise where it came down to economics. It truly came down to economics. And I just said, hey, how much money did I make this year? Because it's one of those things where you don't want to hire somebody, you don't want to build a team and create leverage until you actually need to. I'm a big believer in leading with revenue. And you can throw money at people and you can throw money at processes, and that will unlock and create time, but that will compress profitability. So I do believe in leading with revenue, and you're going to get to a point, just like this cup, right? Is until this cup is overflowing and I am missing out on profitable generating opportunities, I'm not going to throw a cup underneath it. I'm going to max out myself and say, what does it take for me to earn the right to have permission to go and hire this person? And for me, it was, once my cup is overflowing with opportunities and I can no longer keep up with them because I am doing administrative work and I'm not focused on empire building work, I'm focused on empire protecting work, that's when I need to build and hire an empire protector in my organization. And so what it came down to was, I looked at how much money I made that year, how many hours I worked that year, and essentially broke down. It was like, hey, I'm making $85 an hour or something like that. And when I went through and I tracked my entire week of activities, and I saw that I was 40% of my time spent on administrative, maybe $10 to $20 an hour activities, that 40% of time, if and when freed up, would allow me to go focus on the $85 an hour activities and actually raise how much money my time was worth, and allow somebody else to come in here and do the $10 to $20 an hour activities. And so I just essentially highlighted all those activities, and that's what created a job description for my personal assistant, which was my first hire in my team. And that gave me permission to go out and hire that individual. Now, it was a leap of faith, right? It's a little scary bringing on overhead. And is this person going to work out? And am I going to be able to pay their bills? And all of those things, right? But again, I've always believed in betting on myself. The best person to bet on the entire planet, if you're confident in yourself, is you, right? And so I bet on myself, and I said, you know what? I'm not the best leader. I don't lead like Tony Robbins. I'm not the best money manager. I don't manage money like Warren Buffett. This was when I was, 22. I know I have a lot of learning opportunities, but I'm going to fail my way forward and be as intentional as I can be and aware as I can be to say, if and when I fail, I'm going to learn from that. I'm going to 2.0 from that, and I'm going to grow from that. And that's what allowed me to build, my real estate companies, build, the construction company, build a lot of the companies that we've been able to build. We have amazing employees and team members, which has all come from having quality people. I'm definitely not the smartest person in any of my organizations. I surround myself with people that are way smarter than me, right? Way stronger than me, way faster than me, way more resilient than me. And I focus on my core competencies. And that has allowed me through people and processes to scale, right? Because you and I we're not scalable. We all only have 24 hours in a day. So if you want to scale, it's going to be through softwares and systems and processes, and it's going to be through world-class talent and being a great recruiter of talent and identifying when you recruit that talent, what their strengths are, and getting them in the right positions and supporting them as best you can to win in those positions, achieve those goals, and stay the hell out of their way, right? And so those are some of the things that have really allowed me to cover ground that there's no way I would have been able to cover by myself. People are like, how the hell do you do the podcast and the Rich Life Planner and the community and all your real estate developments and flipping houses and the construct? And I'm like, it's not me. It's just not me. It's the team. So I give massive credit to the people that are around me because they're amazing and they deserve all that credit. And together we are all able to do something that individually none of us would be able to do by ourselves.
Love it. Great tips there. Matt, we're going to transition to our bullseye round. Are you ready for that?
Let's roll.
All right. How has a failure or apparent failure set you up for later success?
Well, I think, honestly, for me, that's one of the questions that I always ask is, what was I supposed to learn in this opportunity or in this failure? And I believe every failure is just feedback for something that we need to do a little bit differently moving forward, that if we're aware enough to ask that question and to receive that feedback, when applied, it allows us to 2, 3, 4, 5x some of the results that we weren't getting. It's almost like getting an opportunity to skip levels a little bit. It's like a little cheat code, but most people look at failures in a really negative way. So for me, whether it's, hey, I failed in how I showed up for my wife this week, or hey, I lost my patience with my kid, or hey, I made this bad investment and I should have done X, Y, and Z, looking back and moving forward, that's made me 5 or 6 times what I would have lost in that moment. So I'm just always going back to the failures, the feedback. It's a learning opportunity, and it's my job, nobody else's. It's my job to seek and find what that failure can teach me and how I can implement it in my journey moving forward.
What is the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year? Traction by Gino Wickman. If you really want to run your business like a business and see how big businesses are running and operating and scaling at a high level, Traction is one of the best out there. Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Digital or mobile, I like Gecko Board. Gecko Board is a dashboard for all of your analytics, your key performance indicators. So we have that Gecko Board up in the office, which ultimately is kind of public accountability of how we're doing, how people are scoring based on what they're responsible for, their analytics, their performance indicators. And that gives it, one, it's fun. People like gamification of things that they're working on and working towards. And it also creates public accountability, which forces people to uphold the standards of excellence that we expect, or it helps us identify the people that we may need to see out of our company or help them recalibrate in a way that they can course correct.
We've talked about this a little bit, but what is one daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
Well, one daily habit for me is the planner. Every single day, I check in the planner, morning time, afternoon, evening time. 3 times a day, I'm in my planner, at least updating things, and that's kind of my living, breathing scorecard of performance.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
How to, honestly, how to read a P&L, how to understand a balance sheet when I was first starting out. If I had more financial literacy starting out as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, I would have played the game a little bit differently. Mind you, a lot of those failures led me to ahas and breakthroughs that have served me at a really high level, but financial literacy would have empowered me to scale and cover a lot more ground than not knowing the things that I didn't know.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew 12 months ago?
Oh, what I wish I would have known now 12 months ago would be the importance of core values in your business. I have had core values in my business, but they were like stuffed away in a drawer. Now we communicate in terms of our core values to our customers, to our employees. So the culture within our organization and externally that attract people into our organization or repel them away from our organization is our core values, and making those omnipresent. So becoming the Don King of your own core values. If you wanted to have a successful boxing match, right? Who did people go to? It was always Don King because he was the best promoter in the world. Well, we need to be those people with our core values and how we communicate that to our employees, to our customers, to ourselves. And that allows people to buy into your brand at a much deeper level. I had that, but it wasn't omnipresent. Now it is omnipresent. It's what we talk about, it's how we communicate, it's what we stand for. And that was something that I wish I would have implemented a lot sooner.
What advice would you give to a smart-driven college student?
I would say invest in relationships and don't be afraid to work for free and just continue to create value for people. One of the greatest life and business hacks for me has been through mentorship. It has allowed me to shorten my learning curve on a lot of things that would have taken me a long time to learn. It's allowed me to accelerate the results that I've gotten. It's allowed me to tap into networks and opportunities and conversations that I probably had no business being in or would have taken decades to develop those relationships for. Mentors have been one of the greatest life and business hacks that I think a lot of people overlook and discount because they don't see the initial results showing up in their bank account or on paper.
What are you curious about right now?
I'm very curious about hedge funds, and that's a big 2020 goal is setting up and starting a hedge fund to get to that next level of the goals that we're looking to get to. I know a lot of people, it's one of those things where achieving a small goal and achieving a big goal essentially require the same amount of effort. So you might as well go big. And that is my big focus over this next year is starting a hedge fund.
All right, give me the best place to grab a bite in your city.
Best place to grab a bite in my city is either going to be Ella in downtown Sacramento, best food out there, or Mikuni's Sushi. It's a Japanese restaurant. Dude's got an amazing story. Now he's up to, I think, 20 or something restaurants on his way to 90, and really cool entrepreneur.
Awesome. Sounds like 2 great places next time we're out in Sacramento. For all of our Sacramento listeners, make sure you check that out. Let us know your thoughts on them. Listen, Matt, you gave a ton of great information. I loved hearing your story about overcoming some of the challenges you faced early on to create a rich life for yourself, and then recognizing that rich life was not just about the money, but other aspects, including health, mindset, family, relationships, and other things there. And just talking more about what it takes from a mental standpoint and how we can be more intentional with our actions and with our time for us to create a rich life ourselves. For our listeners who want to follow up, maybe check out your podcast, where can they get in touch with you and hear more about the things you're working on?
they can always head over to millionairemindcast.com and check out the podcast, subscribe, review on any of the platforms. We also have this on YouTube. Or they can just reach out to me. I spend most of my content goes out on either YouTube or Instagram, official Matty A. And I love connecting with each and every person that either listens to my show or listens to your show or hears me on another show. I'm never too busy to take the time to connect with each and every person. So feel free to reach out and look forward to hearing from you guys.
Matt, absolute pleasure having you on the show, man. We look forward to hearing more from you. Stay tuned. And thanks for being on Target Market Insights.
Thanks, John.